Okay, my name is Ron Dando, and I've lived in Glenavon for most of my life, apart from two brief periods, once in the army and once in late 60s, early 70s, when I moved to Yorkshire. But mostly I've lived my life in Glenavon. My ancestors actually moved up from North Somerset, as did many others in that area, moving in to Glenavon when the Industrial Revolution took off. They came for work, and stayed. My great-grandfather, my grandfather, and my grandfather lived in number 6 Stack Square with his family, where my father was born, and grew up. And then when my father married, he and his wife moved into number 4 Stack Square, where I was born with my other two sisters and my brother. And my earliest recollections were because it was quite a small house, the cottages are quite small, it was just 2 rooms up and 2 down. Little pantry built onto the side, some steps leading up to the back, which was a quick way to the toilet because it was only 200 yards from there. But at that time, my earliest recollection was of my grandfather, because they had moved in as well, and I can't remember the reason why, but my grandfather, my grandmother, Mum, Dad, my 2 elder sisters and I all lived there at that time. So it must have been very congested, as you can imagine.
Yeah.
But a lot of people in the area were of the same sort of situation, not only in Stack Square, but Staffordshire Road, Shepherd Square, very much the same. But the neighbourhood, the neighbours, the neighbourliness of people then was fantastic. All us kids must have had a dozen aunties. We weren't really aunties, but, they would take us in and give us a cup of tea or drop a pop or a sandwich or whatever. And the lady 2 doors away from us, Auntie Marge, I called her, would often call me. Now, they never had children of their own, Marge and her husband, and she sort of doted on me. And she'd call me over from playing at the end of the square there, and I'd be as black as the ace of spades. She'd spit out her handkerchief, rub it round my face, and take me to the cinema. But that will remain in my mind for forever, probably.
Yeah.
There were very few mod cons. There was an open fireplace to start with. Even the 2 guys on the end, Charlie and Jim Coney, had no carpets on the floor because my mum used to clean for them. She'd go over and sweep up the old sand off the flagstones and put fresh sand down for them, take in their washing for a few bob a week. And most of the houses I can see now, were whitewashed with white lime. And that would be done every year to spruce it up a little bit. And I can clearly remember the crust on some of the houses where it had been done over and over again in white lime. All in all, you'd have to say that it wasn't a pretty place to live. The ironworks being in such close proximity, and it really was. But in my childhood, I can remember the last area working, which is just a little bit of open cast puddling, and that closed down. Must have been, I could still remember it vaguely, but it was at the very tail end. And of course, at the end of the day, even when those couple of guys that were working there went home, and the last wagons of the coal yard, which was adjacent, pulled out, that would be our playground. There was also, farther on towards the Forge Side area, the coke works, called the Ottos. It was called the Ottos because it was originally, the engineers that built it were from Germany.
Right.
So Otto being the German name, the Ottos, but the coke ovens as well, they had closed down more or less at the same time.
Yeah.
But I can remember going over there, my dad taking me over there when that was working, to see the guy from next door, Fred Jones, who used to work as a stoker.
Yeah.
And it was on 2 tiers. The furnaces were on 2 tiers. And my dad, you could just, at that time, just walk through the works. And nobody would blink an eye, you know. But I could, after that closed down, that again was the play area. It was just an industrial wasteland. That's all I can describe it as, really. Everything in situ, as it was left, as if the guys had just got home and not come back.
Yeah.
yeah, even shovels, stoking appliances, tar pits with tar still in it. All that was open because I remember my dog falling in there, our Bob, and having to take him home, having pulled him out with some lads. We had to take the tar off and virtually shave the poor thing.
Oh no.
But that was it. Just a little bit farther on, there was the laboratories,
Yeah.
full of test tubes, which obviously some of us smashed, being naughty kids as we were. And in the offices, telephones, the old-fashioned, very, very heavy-handled telephones, all that stuff just left. But there was a history teacher in Park Street, the school that I went to in Blenavon, called Eddie Davis, who wrote a small paperback called The History of Blenavon. And he did take time to try to explain to us the industrial heritage of the town. But to my dying shame, I didn't really have any interest at that time. Mostly it was a happy place, to be honest. As far as I'm concerned, anyway. Mostly it was a happy place. You had 2 cinemas that showed alternative films on, and that was, no TV. We didn't have a TV. We didn't have a radio until about 1948, 49. I can picture my dad now walking up around Stack Square with this big Sobel radio in his hands that he saved up for. God, we had some fun with that. Me and my 2 elder sisters. Mum and Dad perhaps would go out on a Saturday evening just for a break up to the local club, maybe. And we'd sit there, twiddling the knobs on this radio, and my sisters would pretend to be pilot and co-pilot, and I'd have to sit behind being the passenger. Otherwise I'd have to go to bed, you see. But they'd be twiddling these knobs and getting stations from various countries, and that would be the entertainment. A coal fire in both rooms. There's 2 rooms down. There's a coal fire there and a coal fire there. I recall upstairs there was a coal fire in the 1 bedroom that was hardly ever used. And at the ceiling, there was no ceiling. The rafters went up to the apex of the roof. And winter time, there would be ice inside the windows as well as outside the windows. No, there were no mod cons at all. Yeah. And it wasn't until, I think my sister said, it was 1946 or 47 that they put an electricity supply through. Prior to that, it was gas and gas lamps. But the only one socket was in the ceiling. Yeah. Because my mum would have to take the light bulb out to plug the iron in when we eventually bought an electric iron rather than have the one on the open fire. Yeah. Little things like that must have made a tremendous difference to them. But our water tap was outside, as I remember. Yeah. Yeah, very, very, very simple life. Yeah. Those things, those deprivations, if you like, lasted until we actually moved from there. And to move into a house on the T-Fry estate, where you walked in and flicked the switch, it had light, flicked another switch and you had gas to put the kettle on, flicked another switch and you had an electric cooker instead of having to light a fire. That must have been like walking into a palace for them. That's the general feel of people from Blenavon. There's a strong bond, there's a strong magnetic pull to this town, and every time I've moved away and come back, and you come either I've come back on occasions by train, or whether it's up Carmarthen Road driving. When you're coming up that road, there's a tingle in the back of your neck that says I'm home, and it's marvelous. It really is. And even strangers that come from various other parts of the country that have moved here say what a wonderful place it is. So certainly there's some little bit of magic about the place.